in Tanya right now are, some of the ideas we're discussing in Tanya right now are really, really fundamental principles of healthy emotions and like the healthy soul and psyche of a Jew, which is why, even though we're taking a little bit more time in this chapter, I think it's like so fundamental because it's the building blocks of tools that are really, really practical and really, really powerful. So that's why we're at this point now. So we talked last week, we talked about different types of joy. We talked about, we're up to the section that opens up. We talked about joy, and we talked about the stresses of, fear and anxiety and depression, and what place they have in Judaism. Is there a space for feeling down about yourself? Does that even exist? How can I fuel or use that energy to propel me forward and grow, as opposed to just hold me back and take me down this rabbit hole of insecurities? We discussed that extensively. I just realized, yes, he uploaded the videos, and I don't think I sent them out, so I will right after this class. I would say, even if you didn't watch all the other videos, watch last classes, because it's a really good summary leading up to where we are today. So now the algebra is going to shift, and we're up to around Parak Lamed Beis, which is the 32nd chapter. We said Lamed Beis last time stands for Lev, which means heart, or our heart, our Lev. And we talked about the advantage, if we truly, let's say now we're seeing ourselves as souls that happen to be in bodies, and so we're starting to relate to ourselves on a soul level, right, on a deeper level, meaning our soul, meaning our potential, our soul meaning not defining ourselves by our struggles, our soul meaning recognizing that our struggles have a place in Jewish life and have a place in our human experience, and how to channel and use frustration at our lack of being where we need to be, or we want to be, or we hope to be, or we see our potential being. How do we use that frustration for growth, as opposed to, holding us back and staying depressed and anxious and sad? And we talked about how the cycle of like just being depressed and sad, that sadness just leads to guilt, which leads to further indulgence in unhealthy behaviors, which leads to this very vicious cycle. Whereas we talked about the difference between atzvos and marira, sadness and bitterness, whereas if you're bitter about not being in a certain place, we discussed how that actually can be fuel to propel us forward in life. Hi, Susan. Welcome back. It's good to see you. At least your name. We didn't see your face yet, but feel free to jump on. So now we're up to this interesting section where the algebra was like, okay, now that you got that about yourself, now that we got you to this place where you can see yourself as a godly divine soul that's in a body that may have that the soul is pure and good, but you may have imperfections as a human being, and how to view those imperfections and how to not get stuck on those imperfections and how to propel yourself forward. Now the algebra is going to shift, and he's going to be like, okay, now that you got that for yourself, now what's the next step? How you view others. Because we all know as parents, we all know as women, we all know as human beings, that let's say there's something going on in our home. Hold on 1 second. Lucia, can you adjust the lighting? Because it's like putting this really whitish, yellowy look on my face. I'll just turn on the camera and I'll just nod to you when yes. A little lower. Good. A little lower. Try. Perfect. Okay, good. Okay. Plug it in my room, please. I don't need it here now. Okay, so now we're saying is if I can see this for myself and who I am and my personality, and I can look at my imperfections, I can try to do that for others. We know as parents, sometimes when we look at our children, we see a behavior or a character trait and we're not thrilled about it. A lot of times it's really a mirror into ourselves, right? A lot of times it's like, oh, well, my kids are all being sharp with each other. Well, like, how am I speaking, right? So we all know for ourselves how a lot of work in changing the vibe or the energy or the dynamics in our home really starts often internally. Real change starts internally. And so the algebra is going to kind of say, okay, now that we kind of covered that this is what needs to happen, and this is how we can operate in a better way, capacity, now he's going to shift us to seeing that, in others. And how if we can relate to ourselves on a soul level, then let's start relating to others on a soul level. So instead of seeing the behavior or the manifestation of their negative character trait or the quality that's bothering us or the thing that's triggering us. So today I got a phone call from a student. The student moved to a new city and they have new roommates and they're trying to navigate this new city. And the student needs to be around people that age. Socialization, super, super essential to their human experience. And this student went out and there were other Aggies there. We connected them to the former students and they made connections and started meeting up, and now the student is living with a roommate, and the roommate is nervous that the student is going out and meeting other people, this former student, right? So they're trying to now navigate. I'm trying to be sensitive to my roommates or the person I'm sharing an apartment with needs. They have asthma, they're nervous about COVID. But on the other hand, if I stay home, I'm going to end up a depressed human being. Like, I will end up depressed. I know it's not good. It's not good for me to just be home and not make friends. I'm in a new city, I need to make people. So helping this student navigate this on the phone. Again, this is a student who graduated, right? This student was here many years ago, but helping them navigate this and helping them see that how to look at the other person. So this is funny because the person went, well, they smoke and they have asthma. And I was like, whoa, forget all the layers you're seeing your roommate as. Peel away all the layers. What's at its core? Your roommate, who you care about, who you live with, is scared. And for legit reasons. Don't start trying to justify why they should be or they shouldn't be or all of that. Let's go to the core of what it is. And when you address your roommate at the core, the essence, the idea, without all the layers, you'll meet their need. You'll meet them where they're really at. You'll peel through all maybe you're being judgmental because they smoke, or you're judgmental because they're not taking their allergy medicine. Don't go into that layer of deciding or evaluating. Go to the core. And when we peeled away the layer, what did it turn out to be? That really this person who moved to this new city was in fact being sensitive. Said, okay, I'll limit my circle to 4 people or 6 people. And then I won't go to big events. And I won't go out to restaurants or bars. And I will change my clothing in the back door and go straight for a shower. So I felt like this student was really going out of their way to truly be sensitive. But then the student said, well, why am I still so bothered by it? I said, 1, put away the judgment. Oh, and the student was like, oh, you're right. There's this judgmental layer here. And I said, the second thing is what? You want to be liked. Everyone wants to be liked. We're human beings. We're sensitive, and it's coming from your sensitivity. So often, sometimes when things are bothering us about someone else, when we really check in with ours, is my camera very slow and weird? A little bit, right? Delayed. Okay. I don't know. Sorry. Yes, he's not home. Otherwise, I would have him adjusted. I feel like I'm watching my face go slow. Slag. Sorry. If someone could you just call Tati and tell him to prioritize my Lenovo. Take my phone, please. Thank you. There's other devices going on, and when there's other devices, I need it. Usually, Essie prioritizes my device so that I'm not lagging, because it feels like I'm lagging. Hold on 1 second. Sorry. Okay, perfect. So sometimes when we see something in others, option 1, it's an insecurity of ourselves, or we're looking through the external layer of the person and we're not seeing the essence and the core. And did I share with you the story last week of the college student who went to the Rebbe and asked what's the Rebbe good for? Did I share that story last week? Okay. Anyone remember?
Just
no.
repeat that because I missed the cut out.
Okay. All right, so I may have said this story and I don't remember, but I think it's in essence really ties very well into where we're at now, that this young college student went to the Rebbe with a group of college students and said, what's a Rebbe good for? And the Rebbe said, my Rebbe was a geologist of the soul. Meaning you and I go dig in our backyards, we're gonna find, I think I did say, right? Mud and rocks and whatever, but at the end of the day, there's this precious stone within, this precious neshama within. And again, the more we relate to ourselves as a neshama, as a godly divine soul, the more we can see that in others. And often when we see something in someone else that we don't like, really what's bothering us is it's our own insecurity, our own reflection of ourselves. What bothered this student at its core was the idea that he thought he was going to be unpopular, he wasn't going to make friends, he was going to be that inconsiderate roommate. And the truth is he really was being considerate. And I had to point that out to him, like, you really are being considerate. You just have to validate that person's feelings, remove that traces of judgment, because as long as you have judgment in your mindset, you're not going to communicate with sincerity. And then you have to also check in with yourself and make that and acknowledge and embrace the fact that this is my insecurity, really speaking, right? Because I saw what he was making the right choices, but he was being burdened by that and wasn't able to navigate or communicate effectively with that roommate, saying, I hear you and I understand. So this comes from an exercise of seeing ourselves as souls that happen to be in bodies and seeing others that way as well. And the more we do that, the more, there's no doubt, there's harmony in the world. The more we see people's potential, the more they can shine. And we all know that often at times we're taught as parents that what we believe about a child becomes their subconscious narrative within their mindset, right? That becomes in their own subconscious of what they think of themselves. So much more so, we have to do that even with those people we're living with or quarantined with or spending way too many hours with or getting on each other's nerves with, whatever, you understand. So it applies, starts within, which is why this is a beautiful segue from the last segment, kind of checking in with ourselves and how we're doing in that area. Now we move onward. Does that make sense so far, where this falls into place, and what are some of the fundamental ideas we're gonna peel away at? Yes? Okay. Any questions, jump in and ask me, please, 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 please. Okay? So now, last week we read text 8, and text 8 on page 75 discusses the idea that if we look at one's body with scorn and contempt, and we find joy in the soul alone, meaning if you could really see ego, defensiveness, our negative character flaws, the issues that we struggle with, right? And we can really connect with the joy of the soul, meaning what it means to connect our potential in this world, nurture and nourish ourselves. And we know that when we do good and we nourish our neshama, we feel good, right? When we learn Torah, we feel like we feel connected, we feel alive. Like, for me at least, I could say for me, but when we do good and we connect on a higher plane, we're nourishing our neshama. It's like, I always say, it's the ultimate in self-care, right? So we always know self-care is mind. We gotta make sure our minds are stay active. Self-care is body. We need to make sure we're exercising and choosing what we're putting in our body. But self-care is also our neshama, our soul. So the more we can understand that, then it's easier for us to fulfill mitzvot, because we're tapping and nurturing and nourishing our neshama, so our neshama feels stronger and healthier and more confident and can express itself. And then I could light a Shabbos candle this week. Okay, I'm not keeping kosher yet or keeping the full Shabbat yet or shutting my cell phone, but I can make Kiddush on Friday night. I could, there's little things we could do. And the more we nurture our neshama and nourish our neshama, the more it gives us that confidence and to be able to do so. So then we go into, with regard to every Jew, both great and small, so now we have to apply this value, and the Alter Rebbe quotes in Vayikra where it says, love your fellow as you love yourself, haftorecha kamocha, which we know the sage Akiva said, Zekla Gadol b'Torah, this is the fundamental principle of the Torah. Love your fellow like you love yourself. We overlook our flaws, we overlook our insecurities, we could justify why we do what we do. Okay, now we've got to do that for others. And it's not easy. This is why it's life work, right? So with regard to every Jew, great and small, because if we can do that for our own self and our own soul, then we have to start doing that for others. Who can know the greatness of the soul and spirit in their source and in their root? The living God. Meaning, remember we said when we first started that what was so revolutionary about the Tanya was it kind of equaled the playing field. And that beforehand, there had been this massive dichotomy between the sages and there was a hierarchy. There was all these sages and scholars, and they didn't have time or space for the, simple farmer and for the shepherd who were illiterate and there wasn't room in Torah for them. They just had to do. And the Alter Rebbe, the Baal Shem Tov, kind of the two first Hasidic Rebbes, the first Hasidic Rebbe of the Baal Shem Tov, and then the Alter Rebbe, the first Chabad Rebbe, really even the playing field. And there are a lot of scholars and sages at that time period were like, what are you doing? Like, they really did not get it. And they tried to oppose and stop the Alter Rebbe. We said that in the beginning when we first discussed the introduction to Tanya, right? Here's a prime example about the Alter Rebbe saying, how can you evaluate which soul is a great soul or a weak soul? A close soul or a far soul? They all come from God. They're all rooted in the living God. If you believe an omnipotent God infuses every single human being with life, right? Then who are we to decide which one is worthy or not worthy? Which soul is better or worse? And so one of the things that really the Lubavitcher Rebbe role model to Chassidim is this mindset and perspective of every single soul is precious, and every single soul has this inherent deep bonding connection with its source. And who are we to decide, rate, or rank Jews? And I've seen it often. I've seen it with students who, you know, oh, I'm conservadox. Oh my gosh, that student's reform, or that's reform. They're an atheist. And I'm like, guys, we're all family. Rabbi and I don't have a ranking system. There's no ranking system. We're in a neshama. You're godly. You're divine. Your bond is forever. It's eternal. So when we'll have people who try to peg, or I once had a conversation with someone and I said, you know, I know that there are those who tell students, Chabad's not for you. You're not Jewish enough for them. Well, clearly they don't know these ideas that are not just fundamental for Tanya, but fundamental within Chabad, and the Lubavitcher Rebbe certainly role modeled it. You know, I've been doing a lot of learning with Label. He's this video clips of different talks of the Rebbe, and I'm watching these clips from the early 70s where the Rebbe's begging his Hasidim to leave Crown Heights and go out and be there for every single Jew. And the Rebbe says, I've been ridiculed by other giants in Torah learning for this approach. But the Rebbe said every single neshama is precious. And someone once said about the Rebbe, they said that Hitler pursued and searched every Jew out in hate, and the Rebbe searched every Jew out through love. Meaning, wherever you're going to be, there's going to be the ability to connect and find that within yourself. But it always has to come from that vantage point of not superiority, because if every soul is divine, there's no ranking system. And we'll move forward to the next point, but the one thing that's so interesting is this, and I may have shared this story with you before, but it resonates so deeply with me. There was once a Chabad rabbi who walked by the Rebbe for dollars. The Rebbe would interact when he didn't have time to meet one-on-one with people. He used to meet all through the night, day and night with people, to give advice and counsel. And one night, well, he couldn't do that anymore. He would meet with a Sunday encounter and give $1 to the Chassidim would pass by, and the hope was two people meet, something good should benefit the third. The Chassid was supposed to give that $1 to tzedakah, and the people would ask the Rebbe for blessings for different things that were going on in their life. And once a Chabad rabbi on a post somewhere stopped by and he asked the Rebbe for a blessing for his brother who had no connection to Judaism, and the Rebbe said, huh? So he repeated it louder and slower, thinking the Rebbe didn't hear, and the Rebbe went, huh? Finally, by the time the Shliach said it the third time, the Rebbe said, I don't understand. Is he not the son of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Sarah, Rachel, Rebecca, and Leah? What do you mean by no connection at all? It's not possible. So I think that this mindset certainly comes from the Tanya, but I will say that we saw that role modeled in the Rebbe's behavior, and that really has been a great inspiration for Rabbi and I. And so students who maybe takes them 3 years to walk through Chabad's doors, or they're not comfortable, or they're not ready to engage in their Judaism, they always know that door is open. I just had a conversation on Instagram last week, or through text last week, with a student who was minimally involved in the Jewish community. They weren't comfortable, didn't like this, so whatever it was, they had other interests in their major, whatever it was, they were overwhelmed, maybe they didn't have positive Jewish experiences, whatever it was, but we always made sure that the student knew that they were welcome, and we loved them. And I just had this most incredible conversation with the student about the power of prayer and mindfulness. And here, if Rabbi and I decided he wasn't, quote, worthy of our time, because we wouldn't have good results, or data, or statistics, or analysis, I don't know, whatever you would want to say, then, or better bang for our buck, let's invest in students that we should invest in, this student, that door to Judaism, or that bridge, would have been closed or burned. And we'll never do that, because if you believe that we're divine and godly, then what? Everyone is. So I think it's deep life work, but I think that the world needs more of this. Look at anything that's going on in the world, we need this now. Truly seeing the godly soul, even someone who has a different political perspective, right? Hard to do, but certainly a good goal. Let's move forward, because I just did a very long framing this. Let's look to text 9 on page 76. If someone can read, I would love it.
You want me to read?
Read.
Okay. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
Gail, you get the
Go ahead.
you get
Gail,
text
you
9,
start.
and Lior will get the next one.
Yep.
Go ahead, Gail. Lior
Okay.
will get the next one.
All right. Yet another, is that the right place?
Yeah, you got it. It's a long one, but
Okay.
you got it.
Yet another means of leading one's soul to true joy, especially at those specific times when one finds it necessary to purify his soul and illuminate it with the gladness of heart, is this. Let him then think deeply and picture in his mind the idea of God's true unity. Let him consider how he permeates all worlds, both upper and lower. Let him consider how even this world is filled with his glory and how everything is of no reality whatsoever in his presence. He is one alone in the upper and lower realms, just as he was one alone prior to the 6 days of creation. Even in the very place where this world, the heaven, the earth, and all the legions was created. He alone then filled this space.
Keep going.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, it's longer, sorry.
And the same is true now. He is one alone without any change whatsoever. For in relation to him, the very existence of all created beings is utterly nullified. When one will deeply contemplate this, his heart will be gladdened and his soul will rejoice. In this faith, which allows him to feel the nearness of God, which is, after all, the whole purpose of man and the purpose of his creation and the creation of the worlds, that he may have this abode here below.
Okay.
Here below.
So here we're back to trying to find joy within the world. Now that we understand that if we can find joy within our own self and dig deep and see our godly divine soul, and we certainly have to do that for others, right? So now we're going to circle back to that joy. What is the Alter Rebbe trying to explain this deep, huge, esoteric, and later on in Jewish philosophy and Hasidism? I'm watching like two birds fight outside. It's hilarious. Sorry. Like I'm so ADD, the window's open. Sorry about that. It was like really right there. So what is this unity? It's a massive Hasidic philosophical idea. It's called Yichud Hashem, which literally means, like we say, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Elokeinu is our God. That Elokim is sounds plural, but Hashem Echad, God is one, is the singular. So what is this manifestation of godliness in different ways? If we believe that God is omnipotent, which Judaism does believe, right? Then this omnipotent God can be present within this world and at the same time concealed. Can be above this world, but at the same time desire an abode, desire a space within this world. And what this entry or this is kind of tapping into is this idea that God actually desires this omnipotent God that existed prior to creation, right? And there's this whole discussion in Maimonides, if the world disappeared tomorrow, would God exist? Not only would God exist, was God changed? An omnipotent God doesn't change, right? And anytime we say give anthropomorphism and we give God sees and God hears and God knows, we're actually limiting God by human terminology or phraseology. And really it's so that we understand, because we only understand people that see and hear and know. So we're in a way when a lot of times when we're referring to God within nature, within this world, really we're limiting God. We're not limiting God's abilities, but we're limiting in our own mind because we have finite minds. What is infinite? How do we understand Yichud Hashem, this unity of godliness that is paradoxically invested in this world concealed within nature in a plural form, and yet hovers above this world in the singular, powerful, omnipotent being? Why is this can seem like almost like a left turn, like where are we going with this? The power of understanding this is that this omnipotent, powerful one God, Hashem Echad, actually desires a relationship with me and you and I. Desires a relationship with my fellow Jew. Desires a relationship with every being created in this world. Not just a relationship, but a personal relationship. Because God actually needs us in order to accomplish something. So here's where it's so powerful to understand is that why did God need this mundane, finite world? Like, I have a feeling that we've been quite a headache for God. Humans have made lots of messes. I mean, could you imagine trying to manage the world? I could barely manage my house, a Chabad house. That's like a full-time job, right? Just try to do that. A whole world? Do you know what's going on in this world, right? Like, what a mess, right? Yet, here's this divine God that it says in Kabbalah had a craving, a desire to have a relationship with man. Desired a relationship with finite, limited beings in order to create here, and this is what where you wrote there, what you read there, sorry, that the purpose of meaning the whole purpose of man and the purpose of creation was what? And here's where I would say it's a very, again, another fundamental building block, which is why I love Tanya, because I think through the lens of Tanya, you can really unpack real building blocks, right? Like I love how I glossed over Yichud Hashem in like one sentence. It's a concept that deep Hasidic masters have spent years expounding on and describing and unpacking. And yet we're saying this divine God desired a relationship with this mundane, limited physical world with concealment, through this idea of God concealing his identity within this world. Why? And here it goes, that God desired a dwelling place in this world. That God specifically desired a relationship in this world with humans, basically making God feel comfortable in this finite, limited world. And how we know this, and if you look at the last sentence in Hebrew, that all those are created, bitalim atzlai. What is this? Mitzias. Everything that's created is created with his essence. Created with, even though, in the name, like, if we had to rate ourselves in front of God, what would we say? Okay, a finite God, an infinite God and finite humans, like, we're just like, who are we? No, it's within you and I that God wants a connection. Is that God actually wants us to be humans, to fumble, to struggle, to overcome, to work, and through questioning, through thinking, through pondering, through really, really working on ourselves, we can bring more light and godliness into this world. So yes, these are very, very, very big ideas, but ultimately we're saying, number one, this world has a purpose. This world has a purpose. It's not just like some funny experiments. Number two, you and I have a job within this world to actually transform this physical world into a spiritual space. Imagine you had a guest coming who was handicapped, had special needs, whether it was an allergy or handicapped accessible, or someone who just loved, I don't know, a certain type of food, vegetarian maybe. What would you do if you had that guest coming to your home? You'd make sure they feel comfortable. And it's actually, I would say, one of the things that Yessi and I work really hard to do is know each of the students' diets and allergies and restrictions and needs, because I want them to feel comfortable. I always tell them, home away from home is not just a slogan. We want you to really know. So we know this one is allergic to this, and this one needs vegan, and this one needs vegetarian, and this one doesn't eat dairy. Like, we know because we want them to feel comfortable, right? So similarly, if you're having a guest, you're going to make sure they feel comfortable. Someone's handicapped accessible. You're not going to put something up on the third floor, right? You're going to do it in the backyard or the front yard. Or if someone has an allergy, you're not going to serve them that allergy. You want to make sure to make your guests feel comfortable. Similarly, God created this finite world with God's presence intentionally concealed within nature, and then created space for you and I in order for us to make space for him. Almost like to have some skin in the game and invest in this relationship. And so really, when we all know, no, yes, it doesn't work. Just trust me. Yeah, there you go. When you and I can understand, and not just understand, but get this idea across to our children, that number one, the world has a purpose. And number two, they are here for a reason. I find that this message resonates with students so deeply, because some of them are like, am I just a carbon footprint? Like, what am I doing here? Why am I here? Why the pain? Why the suffering? Why the struggle? Why the ups? Why the downs? When know you and I, and that starts also with all of us here, are partners with God in creation. God needs us in this world and relies on us to elevate materialism, physical matter for good and for holiness and for spirituality. You know what that leads to? A deep sense of inner joy, a deep sense of I'm here for a reason. You ever went someplace and you felt unneeded? It's not a good feeling. Yessi and I, a student once said to us, he graduated, he married an Aggie, they're married 5 years. Yessi married them. They're a beautiful couple, the met at Chabad. He said years later that he realized the students would roll into kosher cooking club. They would make a giant balagan, maybe bake challah on a cake. And he said, and we felt very proud. We helped make Shabbos. He said only years later did he realize that he would roll in Friday night and there was like a 3-course dinner. He's like, wait, when did the rest of the stuff happen? So he said he realized that he was on to it. That you and Rabbi created a space that we were needed at Chabad so we could feel connected to Shabbos and connected to our Jewish Aggie home. When God gives us mitzvot and God gives us opportunities to connect with him in this material world, he's saying, I need you. No one wants to feel unneeded or useless. It's not a good feeling. So God needs us, and we need to understand that. And there's a deep joy from knowing that our day-to-day actions, yes, I can eat an apple, make a bracha, and I am helping bring godliness into this world. I can use my energy for good and bring godliness into this world. I can use my money for good and bring godliness into this world. So there's a deep joy from knowing that it's not just all spinning out into the whatever for whatever reason, like a bad science experiment. There's a divine reason right here. And you and I, and there's more ideas that every person we meet for a reason. Every soul we encounter is for a reason. Our own personal dynamics of our homes and our families are also for a reason, right? It comes with a broader perspective if we really believe that everything happens is divine. But let's start with this. There's a reason the world exists and there's a reason we're in it. And that knowledge, deep inner joy. Thoughts on this big ideas? There's a lot of big ideas in this chapter. Any thoughts?
I agree.
Any ways that you could see that in your own life?
Yeah, and even when you can't, I don't know, there's sometimes like you go, now why is this happening? Or why did I meet this person? And sometimes you just have to say to yourself, well, there must be a reason. I'll figure it out soon, hopefully, hopefully it'll be revealed. But yeah,
I think we think that often when we meet someone who gets under our skin, right? Like, really, this is why this person came my way.
Yeah.
There's a reason. But I think understanding that this physical mortal humans with flaws and imperfection are exactly the beings that God invested himself in order to create this dwelling split place. We say, Lasa is like Dira Le'Yispar, the Tanya, to create a space in this low world, mundane world for godliness. So there's something very beautiful about that. And if the students that walk through our doors can get it, that the world needs them. If this generation knew that the world needed them, they're not just a burden, they're not just annoying. There's a part of the world, I always tell the students, again, this is something we've really been trained, there's a part of the world that needs your divine energy and light. There's a reason you're here, It's one of the messages we always try to give them on their birthday. You're here for a reason. Try to find a way to bring light into the world, bring goodness into the world. And that leads to deep joy. Okay, read 77 for us, Leora, if you don't mind.
Yes. This is a double and redoubled joy. Apart from the soul's joy upon apprehending how near God is to him and how he dwells together with him, he will also rejoice doubly in the joy and pleasure which his faith brings to God. whereby the darkness of this corporal world is changed to light. For there is no joy before God like the light and joy of the unique quality of light that emerges from darkness. This is the meaning of the verse, let Israel rejoice in his maker. That is to say, that every descendant of Israel should rejoice in the joy that God feels in dwelling here below.
The idea being that, can you imagine what it's like to feel comfortable or needed, or like I said, comfortable, right? So you go some places and you feel comfortable, you go some places you don't feel comfortable. Feel comfortable, we have the ability to make God comfortable in this mundane world. And we said in previous classes, this idea that spirituality and materialism are fused. And through that fusion, we elevate this mundane world, right? We all know money and power could be used to destroy. Money and power could be used to heal. We're the ones who are blessed with this gift of bechira, free will, in order to decide how we're going to affect the world in a positive way. So, gotta do it. It takes work. It takes daily work, but there's no doubt that it's worthwhile. And it's nice to see when we can make a difference in this world. It's a really good way to live life, right? Gail, you've been in education for years. You've made a difference in plenty of young children's lives. You brought light into the world, right?
Tried to.
Huh?
Tried to.
You tried to. We're all trying.
Sometimes it's easier than others.
Oh,
Yeah.
If it was easy, goodness gracious.
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine if we could just do it from the couch?
No.
We're meant to have skin in the game,
Mm-hmm.
right? We're meant to roll up our sleeves and work hard and do this. Deep work, but it's worth it. In essence, when the Jews created the temple, they were creating a physical space for godly presence. So we don't have a temple like that anymore, but actually describes, Hasidic philosophy describes that every home is a mini temple, a mikdash ma'at, which literally means a mini temple. The idea being that godliness can dwell in our own homes. So how do we do that? We put it stuck on our wall. We in our homes, we put Shabbos candles, we put Jewish books, we make sure blessings are said. There's little things to make God comfortable in our own mini home, our mikdash ma'at. Takes work. But we all know anything that's worth it takes work, right? Mm-hmm. We all have experience. Okay, text 11. And then actually, I think we're going to finish the section today, which is kind of, wow, cool. We got through something significant. Making progress. Yeah, have fun. Okay, anyone want to read text 11? We're almost there.
I can read it.
Thank you, Leora.
He should reflect in his heart as follows: the capacity of my intelligence and of my soul's root is too limited to constitute a chariot and an abode for God's unity in perfect truth. For my mind cannot grasp or comprehend his unity at all with any degree of comprehension in the world. Not one iota, in fact, of that which was grasped by the patriarchs and prophets. This being so, I will make him a sanctuary and an abode by studying Torah that at fixed times, by day and by night, to the extent of my free time, as stipulated by the law governing each individual's situation, set forth in the laws of Torah study. As our sages say, even one chapter in the morning and one at night, thereby his heart shall rejoice. He shall be glad and offer praise and thanks for the fortune with a joyous and happy heart. He has merited to act as God's host. And even the remainder of the day, when he is engaged in commerce, he will provide a dwelling for him in his business affairs by giving charity.
Why does the Alter Rebbe go into this idea of, so here the Alter, it's very interesting phraseology. First of all, saying do we even understand what it's like to create a chariot and dwelling place for godliness? What does that even look like in our brains? We can't, what does a chariot for God look like? Is it gold? Is it silver? Is it big? Is it small? We think in finite, limited terminology. So we like to envision things. So it's really hard for us to understand what this unity is. But what we could understand is that we could make God comfortable, and we could understand how when we learn Torah, we start to understand what God wants out of us, which we said Torah is a hora'ah, a life lesson, a teacher, a guide. We could even understand that even a little bit of intentionality bringing godliness into this world, when we said Torah is God's will and God's wisdom, So when we study it, we're bonding with God in a deep way because we're connecting on a oh, that's what you want out of for me, right? It's God's will and God's wisdom. God wants out of us. And then the other thing we can understand that even if we do so throughout the day, little pockets or moments of spirituality, then we can understand that even when we're busy with business or busy with commerce, in this case, it's discussing that you can still make God feel comfortable in your business. How? The Alter goes on to explain tzedakah, because the Alter explains the power of tzedakah is that you don't just elevate the coins that you're giving, you elevate all the efforts, the energy, the emotion. If you worked and you know, I'm gonna give a good example. You worked and you got $100 for a consulting session, and $10 go into tzedakah, then not just does those $10 that then that poor person's gonna use to eat food or to do something good with, right? But the $90 are elevated and all the effort, energy, and time expended in earning that $100, and the light that you use to be in the room and the computer, meaning we're really elevating the mundane, which is why tzedakah is actually considered two mitzvot that are considered very holy. One, Torah learning is considered a bond with God, because again, if Torah is God's will and God's wisdom, then by studying Torah, then you're studying what God's will and God's wisdom, what he wants out of us, and his wisdom, his mindset, his thoughts. Whatever, what does God's thoughts look like? Well, let's study Torah. And tzedakah, because tzedakah is the ultimate unification of physical and spiritual, which is why it's such a core Jewish value. It's a real core Jewish value, which we talked about, the value of every day training ourselves and our children to give a coin. And I try to make sure that there's a tzedakah box here, right here by the candle lighting area, in my kitchen. I try to make sure that strategically the children's bedrooms, tzedakah boxes are in a visible space. I remember when we walked into College Station, we walked into the pottery place. My daughter saw a big full thing of piggy banks. She said, "Look, Ma, College Station is a whole row full of tzedakah boxes." To her, it was like just natural tzedakah box. Obviously, she was so blown away that the pottery place was so Jewish. She was so
cute.
Right? It was funny, but it's a cute notion that's what else would you have a bank with a hole for?
Of course.
Obviously, only to collect money to give to others, right? But that's why there's such an emphasis on this value, because it's that ultimate unification of physical and spiritual. And the bottom line is that we have a choice daily on allowing our souls to connect in a deeper way, allowing our animal soul, keep our animal soul in check by doing good, by aligning, and by maximizing our potential in a spiritual manner. Let's look at key points on 80. I encourage you always, there's always supplements on the chapters, little articles. I encourage you to read them because they're just usually really well written and really summarize, expound on some ideas in the chapter. If there's anything in this chapter that like, wait, what is this about? Or I'm not quite sure I got that idea resonates with me, feel free to like jump in and like ask, or even afterwards follow up. Anyone want to read some of the key points? Because we're going to do this like brief summary of the whole thing, and then we'll wrap. It's 8 points, but I think we can haul through them pretty quickly. Anyone?
I can read some.
Thank you, Cam.
The process of self-change can be both difficult and daunting, and without an attitude of joy and optimism, one may lose the motivation and edge one needs to continue.
Okay, we can understand that. Doing something with joy and optimism, doing something with drudgery. We get it. All of us. I don't know about you, but I definitely get what this is about, right?
Okay, definitely. One can feel hopeful in the face of life's challenges by reflection on the fact that everything that God does is good. The good can sometimes manifest itself in a concealed manner rather than a revealed manner.
That was what we said. One huge fundamental principle is that what God does is good. That's Jewish philosophy 101. Whether we get it or we don't. And we talked about revealed good, we talked about concealed good, we talked about what that looks like, and we talked about how we can reconcile that. Keep going.
One can resolve feelings of guilt by appointing particular times to review past actions and develop a concrete plan for improvement. But unchanneled feelings of guilt are non-productive and cannot be allowed to weigh down the entire day.
Pretty clear.
Mm-hmm.
The rabbit hole is a bad place to go. I hear you. I get it. I'll create time and space and I'll work on it. But to let my brain ruminate and be constantly plagued by negative thoughts, certainly about myself or others, not going to help anyone. Toxic energy. I always tell my children, and it's something I try to live with on my own, really, really work on, is really don't give space for toxic energy. Pick and choose where my energy goes. I have a limited amount of everything. All my resources are limited. All of our resources are limited. Time, energy, space, got to pick and choose where it goes. And it is a choice, right? We all know that. Okay, keep going.
Okay. Shame is utterly futile. Instead of feeling depression because of the ongoing struggle with temptation, one should view it as an opportunity through overcoming the challenge. One is serving God.
This is amazing. It's amazing. We serve Hashem when we struggle. We move forward. Keep going. You're doing such a good job, Gail. You get to do all 8, I think.
A shift in self-concept so that one identifies primarily with the soul rather than the body is the key to experiencing the joy that results whenever we do a mitzvah.
Right? Not every mitzvah feels incredible. There's a mitzvah not to have wool and linen together. It doesn't feel good to take your suit to a place to see if there's wool and linen. It seems like a really, seriously, what's that mitzvah about, right? Yet, if we understand on a soul level, it's, turning down the cheeseburger doesn't necessarily feel good, right? But we have to understand that we're souls with bodies. And when we relate to our neshama, when we allow that neshama to talk to us and guide us, and then we can live very meaningful lives. Okay, keep going.
When we view our fellow Jews primarily as souls and not bodies, we are able to genuinely love them as ourselves and sense that truly we are all one.
That's a big one, and that's one that we need to work on. And I think it starts with the people in our homes.
But doesn't that also extend to people who aren't Jewish, friends?
So here the Alter Rebbe is talking to Jews, obviously. The Alter Rebbe he wasn't writing this it wasn't like Philosophy 101 to sit in Barnes & Noble's bookstores.
Right.
Remember, he wrote this to his students.
Mm-hmm.
He wrote this to obviously, of course, there is no doubt that every single thing that exists in this world has divine energy, as we read earlier. And but yes, we have to see everyone primarily as a soul, not the things that limit us. And maybe the Alter Rebbe was writing because, you know what? My husband says this old joke, the difference between an anti-Semite and a Jew. A Jew, you say, do you love Jews? I love all Jews. Do you like my neighbor? My neighbor, what? My brother-in-law, what a scoundrel. I don't talk to him. My doctor, this. You tell an anti-Semite, do you love Jews? I hate Jews, but what about your Jewish lawyer? Oh, my Jewish lawyer, he's a good guy. What about your Jewish doctor? Oh, my Jewish doctor, he's, right? We have a problem. We do have a problem. We do. Jews have a problem. We have a problem. Divisiveness is not new for us. So
right.
The Alter Rebbe is talking and saying, get it together, people. Your souls. Start there.
I see. Yeah.
And we got to start with our family problem first right now. Like right now, we got to heal our family, right? Like we could save the whole world. And that certainly doesn't free us to be terrible or horrible to anyone else. The same Torah that commands us to love your brother commands you to also love the stranger. And to also, right? In the Torah, the time that it says the most, to those who are infirmed, or those who are poor, those who are widowed, certainly the Jewish need to repair the world, to tikkun olam, is the whole world. We know when it comes to tzedakah, we need to start with our family first. When you're starting big nonprofits but your own brother or sister starving, that's a problem.
Makes sense.
Okay, next.
Engaging in mitzvah allows us to fulfill our life's purpose of building a dwelling for God in the lower realms. It is a source of great joy that we are able to live purposefully and feel close to Him.
Yeah. You know what? At the end of the day, like I said, not every mitzvah is going to feel so deep and meaningful, but if we understand that this is the God who created us and created the world, like, look, this is how I want to feel comfortable. We want to make our guests feel comfortable. We can think along that similar mindset. And last but not least, certainly not least,
there is added joy in our feeling of privilege in being God's partner and host in this world.
Yeah. Again, knowing that this divine God relies on me and relies on you and relies on us in our day-to-day actions is very uplifting. It means holiness means our every single day can be permeated with holiness. Like if you open the code of Jewish law of what it takes to live life as a Jew, it's literally from when you wake up till you go to sleep. It's like 24/7. So there's so many opportunities to elevate this world and bring godliness into this world, bring goodness into this world. And it happens from every part of my life. There's no part of my life that falls outside of Judaism's perspective. If we believe God is omnipotent and Torah is God's will and God's wisdom, then Torah is a perspective on everything. Just have to try to see how we can do that in our day-to-day life. Little ways, and I will say, starts with the little mitzvahs. Starts with 1 coin a day in the tzedakah box. Starts with 1 Shabbos candle. This month, I'm going to light Shabbos candles twice. It starts with I'm standing in the supermarket and there's 2 items there and I'm going to choose. Why not choose the one that's kosher, right? So it's about little moments. It's about that time when I'm about to lose it to my spouse and I could say, well, he's also godly and divine. Right? It's the little moments where we can bring holiness and godliness into the world, and it's a deep exercise. But there's no doubt that the more we work on ourselves, the more we reflect, the more we can grow, the more anchored we feel, the more connected we feel. And I think that this chapter, though while it does cover such big ideas, each one on their own is so inherently valuable. And leads to what? Joy, which is why we said the section's about joy. Because knowing I'm here for a reason, there's my life is here for a reason, even my personal struggles, the people that annoy me, or my personal struggles that I haven't overcome, or my personality traits that I'm struggling with, or the mitzvah that I can't master, all of that there's divine orchestration in this. Wow. Big stuff, big ideas.
Really are.
Yeah, they really are. But there's a certain inner peace the more we can make these ideas a part of our reality. So much of the chaos and dichotomy of the world can be settled internally.
Yeah.
I just want to say these ideas seem pretty radical and pretty heavy. So I realize that, and especially now this class where we're summarizing a lot of very big concepts, but I think that we can take time between this week and next week and just break them down a little bit by bit, and see what is one way I could look at my tomorrow mundane day and see how I could elevate and uplift it. What is one way I could see someone in my life, in my family, in my workplace, in my community, maybe in my synagogue, maybe in the sisterhood, or someone I could see that neshama within and not their external behavior. I could see that godly soul, and I could treat them with the same love and kindness I want to be treated with. Or maybe one time this week that I could look at myself and instead of beating myself up, I could say, I hear you, I acknowledge you, I'm going to deal with it, but not right now. And don't allow it to consume us. Guilt and shame and all those negative toxic emotions. There's a lot of big ideas here, but they're all valuable. Any thoughts, questions?
I liked all these points. It's just a different philosophy, really, of the way you look at each day. I like that.
Yeah. And you know what, though? It's not as radical, Gail, it can seem, it's not as radical as you think, right? Because if you break down each one on their own, you can understand how that could make your day better, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. And I can see where it kind of gives direction for you and can get you out of that spiral downward that I go through sometimes. So
if you go through it, sometimes chances are you're a human being.
Mm-hmm.
It's good to be in your company. I think the reason these ideas exist is because Torah is made for humans and we're human, right?
Exactly.
Torah was, it's actually, there's a large debate. We'll end with this cute story, but it's an interesting story. There's a large debate when God wanted to give Moses the Torah. The angels really were not impressed. And they formed a debate, like a protest, like, God, why are you giving this, your will and wisdom, your divine, holy will and wisdom to these humans? Like, they're a mess, you know? And God said, okay, let's look at it. You know, Moses was there. Okay, let's discuss this. And Moses said, God says to Moses, what do you defend? Like make a case. And Moses says, okay, let's look at the Torah. It says, honor your parents. He looks at the angels. He said, can you honor your parents? And the angels are like, oh, we don't have parents. Oh, well, I guess that's not for you. What about, you know, give tzedakah? And an angel's like, we don't have hands. I can't give tzedakah. I don't have a job. I don't have money, right? I mean, obviously, I'm taking this big abstract story into a very finite way. The point was that God said, Lo b'shamayim, it's not in the heavens. Torah is for humans. Torah is for humans. That's why all the mitzvot, they may seem overwhelming. There's 613 of them. That's a big, long list. But they're actually conduits or means for us to actualize our potential in our time in this world. No big deal. Only 613. It's fine. The good thing is nowadays we can't do 613. Now there's only about 300 and something that we're actually able to fulfill, because a lot are related to living in the land of Israel, a lot are related to specific groups, and that's, yeah, but that's a separate story. So let's aim for, like, you know, 315. We got this. Yeah, it's like,
I have a long way to go.
We all do. Right?
Now, having Joey home, though, I've been learning a lot and changing how I purchase items and things like that. It's been really good.
Little things.
Yeah. Making sure he has what he's comfortable with.
You're a
And
good mom.
trying to, you know, never having had, I'll admit it, a kosher home. But now when I shop, I think about what I'm going to buy and what I'm not going to buy. And like you said, if there's two items, well, this one's kosher, this one Joey is going to be able to eat, so I'm going to buy this because he'll be there.
Wow.
And I think it's been as good for me as it has been for him.
Gail, you're a good mom. You're a very loving mom. It's
I try.
a lot of
I
work.
agree.
Not easy.
Not easy.
Not easy when you're Michigan a child decides to start keeping kosher.
Well, you know, my daughter became vegan when she was in high school. Then Joey became vegetarian, and now he's kosher. So
You're like, what's going on here?
and we're not any of those things.
Hashem is testing you, Gail.
Yes.
Well, it sounds like she's doing a lovely job. You're doing a
Yep,
great
you're
job.
passing.
Yes, you
Could be a
are.
lot worse. I definitely, I'm definitely open my eyes to things and makes me think about things different.
Yeah,
Nice. Very nice.
that's beautiful. He's a lucky boy to have
I
such
hope
an
he-
understanding mom.
Hope he thinks so.
Hey, that's my job. My job is to remind him.
Mhm.
That's my job. My job is to always remind the students how lucky they are. Oh. Do you
You're
know
doing a great job.
how often they hear that from me? Do you know how lucky you are? And that sometimes I think they're convinced that the parents pay me, you know? Like, your parents did not pay me to say this, but you're lucky. Appreciate your mom. Appreciate her.
Yeah.
Anyway,
That's
lovely
funny.
ladies. Have a wonderful night. It's so good chatting with you guys. We'll move forward. I think we're actually making progress. We're making
Yeah.
progress. The next chapter is also really kind of cool. Yeah, we're going to discuss a lot of big stuff. Our repeat cycle for struggles, like why we repeat the same cycles all over again. The notion of perfection, we're going to re-examine that in the next chapter. Good stuff coming up. Good stuff coming up. Have a wonderful night. Thank you,
Thank
guys,
you.
ladies. I said
you,
guys,
Tanya.
you lovely ladies. To be continued. Looking forward.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much. Have a good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night.